Man, you are one pathetic loser. No offense.
No, none taken.
TFA Fam, welcome back into another video. Today we're going to be discussing 2021 draft losers, stock down, however you want to put it. It's me, your boy Kev, back again with another video, joined as always with Cody Kutzer. Today we're going to bring hot fire, a little bit of the low, a little bit of the downs, because we're talking about guys who just didn't, who we're not as excited about now, who obviously took a major hit due to the NFL draft and where they stand now. So with further ado, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button for future content. And let's just jump right into it, shall we? Listen, it was tough for me to come up with a lot of guys here because I don't think we've had enough time to really digest, kind of see how everything's going to play out. But there were a few that just immediately stand out that you just can't pass up. So, Cody, why don't you tell us who your first guy is that you were just not as excited about?
Yeah, I think there's some obvious ones that, we don't really need to talk about, like Andy Dalton and, Jimmy Garoppolo, those kind of guys with, what those teams did at quarterback. But, if we're going to start off with obvious ones, listen, buddy, I'm here for you. I have the shoulder is here for you to cry on. I understand why you pass it off to me instead of just jumping into it. You needed a minute to collect yourself. Let's just start here, get it out of the way. Your boy, James Robinson. Whenever they brought in Carlos Hyde, we were feeling pretty good about that. You have been the conductor of the James Robinson train all off season. And then, we thought that they could add somebody because that is a pretty thin depth chart. And then they come and they just kick you right in the nads. And they take Travis Etienne in the first round. It was an absolute waste of a pick, in my opinion. I wasn't even a big J-Rob truther to the point that you were. Like I said, third round, maybe, day three guy, maybe. But to come in and, throw in ETN like that, even if we're going to believe what Urban Meyer said and that ETN is their third down back, even if that's true, which if it's true, this Urban Meyer experiment should be over right now, like today. It should already be over. But let's take that at face value. That was a thing that, was really, special about James Robinson last year is he was the guy every single down in, down out. He did well as a pass catcher. So even if you're taking away, just the targets, and then Urban Meyer also said that Carlos Hyde was going to, form a 1-2 punch with J-Rob on the early downs. And if that's the case, I mean, you're looking at a guy who, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. Maybe you do. But in terms of his opportunity share, I'm sure he was, top 5, top 6 in the league last year, among running backs. And now we're taken away from that. So, let's pour one out. I'll let you say a few words here at the eulogy, and then we can move on to some other losers from the draft.
Well, it was a terrible pick. It just was. It just didn't make sense. I continue to say that you really shouldn't take a running back in the first round. And it didn't really make sense for them to take one. Like I said, James Robinson was more than capable last year. Really was one of the best, if not the best, rookie running back last year, who was at UDFA. The amount of money they're paying him was absolutely nothing. It just didn't make any sense to waste a pick there. They have so many other needs. Draft somebody defensively. Fix the offensive line. Whatever. It just didn't make sense to take Travis Etienne there. But it happened. He's there. I still think James Robinson has a role in this offense. I don't think Travis Etienne is going to be the guy. So I think that it's probably going to be more 50-50 split. And it's a situation I just can't touch. And, pour one out for the homie James Robinson. Maybe they trade him somewhere because they need a, he does not deserve to be disrespected like this. The amount of fuck you, Urban. Fuck you. But so, yeah, I mean, that's really all I got to say about James Robinson. Like I said, if ETN falls in the 6th to 8th round, I'll probably be okay with that and maybe be interested in a buyer. If he goes any further than that, I'm probably going to be out on that because I just think that this is probably going to end up being a true 50-50 split. So I can't really mess with that. So, what one spot for me that I will have to say that other people are excited about that I am not, and that is Trey Sermon and the San Francisco back. Listen, I get it. It's Shanahan. All these running backs have success, whether it's Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, all these guys come in and have some success here. But there's just so many damn running backs in this backfield. With Mostert still there, Jeff Wilson is still there. They brought in Wayne Gallman. Trey Sermon's there. They also drafted Elijah Mitchell in the 6th round. There's so many running backs in this back. JaMychal Hasty's still there. So there's like 6 running backs in this backfield. There's no way that I feel like he's going to get the amount of opportunities that people think that he's going to. At most, he's probably going to get 10 to 12 a game. Now, in this offense, it could be explosive enough that maybe he's efficient with them. But it's not something you're going to be able to count on a week-to-week basis. He's not, and so for me, I just can't miss that, at least for year one. I think next year maybe they'll cut some of these guys, get rid of some of this dead weight, get rid of some of these running backs. Most are probably gone. Jeff Wilson will probably be gone. And maybe, Trey Sermon steps in as just kind of the lead back next year. But as of right now, I just can't be a buyer likely where he's going to go. People are going to overhype him. It's in the Shanahan offense, and people are going to want – I think he could end up going 5th, 6th round, and that's just too high for me.
Yeah, this is going to be a New England Patriots type of situation. Like I just like, especially, they traded up to get him in the 3rd round, and, like you said, the Shanahan system, this, that, and the other. Until some of those other running backs are out of the way, like I'm just not going to be able to do it. Like, could Sermon come in and, end up beating those guys out? Sure. But because of the Shanahan system, and because we've seen guys like Jeff Wilson pop off, and give us RB1 weeks whenever there's no one else there, if he slips up or if he's not getting the playbook or something like that, there's not going to be any reason for Shanahan just to slam him into the lineup just because he traded up for him. So that, you know what I mean, that could be a case where maybe he wants him to be the guy, but then he ends up falling back on Mostert and, Jeff Wilson. And because it is Shanahan, would it really be that crazy if, we're looking at Elijah Mitchell as, a 0 RB kind of savior at the end of the year? Like, I don't think so. I mean, I know he was a late day 3 pick, but, if you look at his profile in terms of his athleticism and what he was able to do, I think they were rotating 3 running backs, if I'm not mistaken, for Louisiana, and he was still able to, have some pretty solid production. So this is just a situation where I agree with you, where other people are, starting to hype up Trey Sermon, and I just can't get there for 2021. 2022, we may be singing a completely different tune, with, like you were saying, with some of these other guys out of the way. But as it stands right now, I can't do it.
No, I agree. And, if you look at Elijah Mitchell, like Elijah Mitchell's draft profile is pretty spicy, at least some of the advanced metrics that you look at. I mean, he has a 97th percentile 40, 4.4 40, 86th percentile speed score, 88th percentile burst, and 79th percentile agility. Like, he definitely has and checks the boxes there. He's not a bigger guy, 5'10", 201, so he's probably not going to be somebody that is utilized as an every down back. But at the very least, he could definitely be a 3rd down back, which could hurt Trey Sermon as well. So, I just don't think I can, at least as things stand, mess with this backfield. Who is your next loser from this year's draft class?
Another obvious one we should just touch on quickly, and then we can move on to some of these other guys. But Melvin Gordon, obviously, with your boy Javonte Williams, again, another trade up scenario. Broncos traded up at the top of the 2nd, moved up like 4 or 5 spots to make sure that they got him. Melvin Gordon has always been he has gotten his fantasy value out of being a very volume heavy running back. And even if, Javonte's only chipping in, I think by the end of the year, we're looking at Javonte as the 1A in this offense. And for 2022, he is the clear-cut workhorse. But even at the beginning of the year, I really liked Melvin Gordon as a volume play, as a nice value RB2, because he was getting pushed down. He was getting drafted in that RB 24 to 26 range for the most part, because he's just not that sexy option. Denver didn't have the good year last year. He was an obvious one that I think I just want to touch on real quick. Someone who I'm not going to overreact to this, because he was a day 3 pick. He was a 5th round pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. But I do think that in terms of Miles Sanders' true upside and his ceiling, I do think that takes a little bit of a hit with Kenny Gainwell landing there. I don't think any of us would have been surprised if Gainwell was like a round 3 draft pick for whatever reason. I don't know if it was size or what, or because he only has that, that one season of big time production, that he slid all the way to the 5th. But whenever you look at Nick Sirianni and what he did as OC with Indy, he had a round 4 pick in Nyheim Hines, And if you look at what Hines did in his 3 years there, and there was someone who made the comp of Nyheim Hines to Kenny Gainwell to Sirianni, and he agreed that was probably a really good comp. He had at least 85 carries and 76 targets in 2 of his 3 years in Indy, Nyheim Hines, that is. So I still think, I'm not sure that Gainwell gets that many carries, maybe more in like the 50 to 70 range. I don't know if he gets up to that 80, 85 range. But in terms of targets, we know that targets are more valuable for running backs. So they're worth, twice as much as a carry. And if Miles Sanders, is now not getting that workhorse treatment, we have been Miles Sanders stands here. We've been pounding the table for him, since he came in as a rookie. But now if we're going to be taking away, 70-ish targets, 80-ish targets from him, and that's something that Gainwell did extremely well in his time in Memphis. They moved him around. They put him in the slot. They put him outside. You get him, matched up with a linebacker one-on-one. Gainwell's going to win that, 8 times out of 10. So I'm not going to overreact to it. I'm, not going to talk about Gainwell, completely taking over, this becoming a 50-50 split. But I do think, like I said, in terms of Miles Sanders' overall ceiling and his true upside of what it could be and should be, honestly, I do think it does take a slight hit with Gainwell landing there.
I get what you're saying. I feel like at least for this year, I'm not as worried about that Gainwell is going to come in and get 70 or 80 targets or anything like that. I do think that he's probably their pass catching, more satellite back, much more of like what we thought Boston Scott could be and stuff like that. But I still just don't think, Miles Sanders, I think that he probably still commands 65 to 70% of the touches in this backfield. I think he's still going to get opportunities as a pass catcher as well. I don't think they're going to neuter him and make him just a first and second down back, and all of a sudden Kenny Gainwell is going to get. Now, is he going to lose some? Sure. But I don't think at least year one it's going to be enough to really affect it. But I do hope that people have the same viewpoint of him and lower him even further, because he's already going, late second, early third. And so if he starts going third, fourth round, I'm going to be all about that life with Miles Sanders, because I think the upside is still there with him, and people just aren't, going to be as excited about him anyways, because he didn't really meet expectations as last year. But with Jalen Hurts there in this offense, with adding Devontae Smith, I like what this Philadelphia Eagles offense is going to look like this year. And so, if people are a little bit lower than him on him, then I'm okay with it. I think that top 12 is still within his range of outcomes for this year. So another one for me is Kadarius Toney. Him going to the Giants, I don't understand the pick. I guess, they kind of redeemed themselves with their second round pick, getting Azeez Ojulari, who was thought of being to be a first round pick, tremendous edge rusher, but they got in the second round. But Kadarius Toney just doesn't make any sense, because one, I don't think he's that good. He is just terrible. I saw shout out Matt Harmon, who does the reception perception, did his, and he was like 10% success against man coverage and 1% against zone. 1% success. 1% success. He is just awful. He is basically, you're just wanting to get the ball in his hands, get him in space, and that's it, right? But I don't know really where he plays. He's not an outside guy, right? You're not going to put him on the outside. You're not going to bump Darius Slayton. You're not going to, obviously, Kenny Galladay. So, okay, slot. Well, Sterling Shepard is one of the better slot receivers in the NFL. So why would you bump him out? So I just don't know where he fits in this offense. And so you're going to have people that are going to hype Kadarius Toney, because if you turn on his tape and you see some of the stuff he does when he gets the ball in his hands, he can be electric. I am not going to deny that. But in terms of the next level and everything else there is, I just didn't love the landing spot, and I think it's a very crowded room. Now injuries could happen, and he could be a little more relevant later in the year. But as of things stand, it is not a good landing spot. It's very crowded with Galladay, Slayton, Shepard, Saquon, Evan Ingram. There's so many guys there that I just don't think he's relevant at all this year. And he was a first-round pick.
Here's my thing. You laid out the whole depth chart thing. Sure, if, Evan Ingram is gone next year and Sterling Shepard gets hurt, then, maybe he gets some more opportunity this year. Do we really think that Jason Garrett is going to be the guy to get the most out of Kadarius Toney? like I said, I know there was a bunch of hate with him. He was one of the more polarizing prospects during this draft cycle. You know, some people having him as a top 5 wide receiver. He was consistently mocked in the first. Some people having him outside the top 10 and like a day 3 guy. His value is kind of all over the place. I do think there are some things that he did show well on tape. You know, his short area quickness and agility, his ability to create yards after the catch, I think was really good. But is it going to happen with Jason Garrett? And then you add in, you know, the stacked room on top of it. So we don't have to go into this one too much further. It kind of seems like the only people out there who like this pick were Giants fans. You know, if you guys are on TikTok, we're starting to do a little bit more over there, just with some, you know, quick thought videos. And I did one on Kadarius Toney, and the Giants fans came running in and, you know, made it seem like I was the idiot for suggesting that it wasn't a great pick. And then I'm looking around and like everyone else is saying like, no, this is a bad pick. I'm like, okay, so I'm not crazy, right? Like that's just the fandom. It's how it goes.
Another spot that I think, well, one, you know, it's funny. We've been seeing a lot of talk about like Rashad Bateman and the Ravens pass catching room, but the one guy that I don't hear anybody talk about is Sammy Watkins, who signed there. Nobody brings him up at all as like a deterrent, and it's always like, okay, Rashad Bateman's going to be the wide receiver 2. Tylan Wallace could be the number 3. Devin Duvernay is there, but like nobody mentions Sammy Watkins' name is that he signed there, right? Like he's like a ghost, and it can't be good for Sammy Watkins though. I do know that because you know, they spent two draft picks on wide receivers. This is going to be another one of those situations that we're going to be talking about all offseason, that trying to figure out, because Rashad Bateman was a guy that both of us loved coming into this process. And, you know, I know he's not as big as what we thought he was, but that's not really that big of a deal to me. Like, he has the opportunity to be the alpha wide receiver 1 in this offense, but there is that kind of both sides of it. Now, can Lamar Jackson take that step forward and be kind of like what Josh Allen did once they started surrounding him with more talent? Because now there's not really a lot of excuses unless, you know, Rashad Bateman doesn't work out, but they're adding all this talent into this backfield, or into this wide receiver room for Lamar Jackson. If Lamar Jackson can take that step, then this could be really good things for a guy like Rashad Bateman, you know, or possibly Sammy Watkins, at least year 1. But as things stand right now, this is kind of a crowded wide receiver room in an offense that's probably not going to throw the ball a ton, because Roman, and, you know, with his defense and with Lamar Jackson, you know, keeping the ball on the ground. Like, I think overall, like, you know, this could be a really crowded wide receiver room that maybe these guys just kind of cannibalize each other.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, because like now all of a sudden, like you said, it went from Willie Snead and Miles Boykin to now you're looking around, you're like, oh shit. All right, like we didn't mention him as a winner. We probably should have on the show we did for the for the winners coming out of the 2021 NFL draft. Like you said, Lamar Jackson, like there's not going to be a lot of excuses left for him after this year. If he fails to take that next step, like you're not going to be able to look around and say, well, they need to give him more help, because now you're talking about Andrews and Bateman and Wallace and, you know, whatever role Sammy plays. So that's
Marquise Brown.
Yeah, now Marquise Brown. The thing with Bateman, I think that people are going a little too far with the hate on Bateman with his landing spot. It's going to come down to it's not even for me necessarily Lamar Jackson. It's going to come down to whether or not they're going to use Rashad Bateman as that alpha and move him around. He has a bunch of snaps on the outside where he succeeded. He has a bunch of snaps on the slot where he succeeded. They need to do a better job of, because Lamar Jackson is limited as a passer, point blank period. He's limited. He's not going to be a guy who can hit all levels of the field, you know, inside, outside, every level. He is good at, you know, in the middle of the field. That is where Lamar Jackson succeeds. Are they going to move Bateman into the slot and let him operate in the middle and keep, you know, Marquise and Tylan Wallace on the outside for the most part? That is going to be what I think is going to determine how well Bateman does or does not do. But like you said, I don't necessarily think that it's going to be, even though Bateman is an alpha, we both loved him. I don't see this being like a Bateman getting 140 targets and then like the next guy coming in and getting like around 100, 110. I think they're all going to be very clustered together, so I can see that, just from the room as a whole, because I don't think any one of these guys are really going to dominate targets in that group.
Like I said, I think this is going to be one of the more polarizing situations, something we're going to be talking a lot about over the next 2 or 3 months as we get closer to August, because I think there's kind of a line drawn in the sand here and where people come in. And more often than not, people are coming in on the negative side of it. But I do think there is a path to success here if Lamar Jackson can take a step forward, because we've seen in flashes where Lamar Jackson played well. We saw a couple years ago he was super efficient through 36 touchdown passes, right? And so now with more talent around him, we'll see if he can take that Josh Allen-like step. Because if he can, then Rashad Bateman could be an absolute steal in this upcoming draft, and somebody that we look more closer to, like a Justin Jefferson, right? Because last year, Justin Jefferson, when he was drafted, similar landing spot, similar type of team who wants to run the ball, who's very run heavy in Minnesota, and a guy that I don't think people really were expecting obviously the production that you got from Justin Jefferson. So this could be somewhat of a similar situation here in terms of for Rashad Bateman. So it's one that I'm excited to kind of monitor over the offseason, kind of see where we end up coming in on him. So, and with that being said, do you have anybody else that's a loser that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I have two more. One guy who I kind of think is a low-key loser in this is Josh Jacobs. We saw what happened to that offensive line for the Raiders during the offseason, where it was just absolutely decimated. And they drafted one offensive lineman, and that was Alex Leatherwood, who they drafted. Yes, who they drafted, 17 overall, something like that. And Leatherwood was one of these guys who was kind of like a fringe round one prospect to begin with. And then obviously it wasn't a draft move for them. But then, kind of questionably or, surprisingly, they brought in Kenyon Drake. So what are their plans going to be for him whenever they have, Jalen Richard, who was, a very fine complimentary running back. And, we've been trying to bang the table and just, pulling our hair out of our heads, wondering why they weren't using Josh Jacobs as a pass catcher. And now, the offensive line went from, over the past 2 years being like a top 5, top 8, top 10 unit to now being in the bottom of that conversation. So I think, Josh Jacobs, just in terms of, the Gruden effect now, it kind of seems like there was a lot of high hopes for him. Kind of seems like he is losing that luster. So that was someone who I thought was a loser in all this. And then the last one, I'm not sure if you have anybody else, but, you were talking about the Niners running back kind of as a group. I think as a group, we could look at the New Orleans Saints offense as being a loser. We thought that this was going to be a situation where they added at least some pass catching help, because now, they obviously let Emmanuel Sanders go in the offseason. So it's now Michael Thomas. Devontae Parker has passed the torch as the offseason hype lord. He has given that to Traquan Smith. He is now proudly, wearing that belt as the guy who's just going to continually be hyped up for, until we see the year 5 breakout or whatever, like we saw from that. And then, the Troutman, I think we both like as a late end kind of tight end sleeper, but I don't think you can bank on him either. And then the only additions they made were Ian Book, of all quarterbacks to add there. And then I think they added like a 6th round offensive lineman and then a 7th round receiver from South Alabama, who I'm not even going to try to pretend to you guys like I have any idea who that is. So I don't know his strengths, weaknesses, what kind of player he is, any of that. But the fact that they didn't do anything with this offense, and now we're wondering who's going to be playing quarterback for them, I think the New Orleans Saints offense can be looked at as a loser as well.
How dare you besmirch Traquan Smith like that? He actually something that I felt like I should have talked about in the winners, because he is likely the number 2 wide receiver in this offense now. And if we get our hopes and dreams come true, we get Jameis as the starting quarterback of the Saints. One thing I will say, at least with Drew Brees, is I mean, he just didn't have the same deep threat ability to really be able to utilize somebody like Traquan and unlock him, because Traquan Smith is somebody that has 70th percentile or 82nd percentile speed score, 85th percentile burst score, like somebody that is super explosive, but just really has never been given the full-time opportunity. Though I will say last year he played 73% of the snaps. But that's not great. That was 63rd among all wide receivers. 50 targets was 87th among all, and 11% target share last year. He did have a few games where he popped, but for the most part, he only averaged 7.9 fantasy points per game or 448 receiving yards on 34 receptions and 4 touchdowns. So, we'll see here for Traquan. Is this the year that he finally breaks out and kind of puts it all together? I don't know, but he's somebody that you could probably get almost for free. So I think he's worth a dart. But I do understand what you're saying. I'm surprised they didn't try to do more in terms of the draft to really upgrade this offense a little bit more, to add some more weapons. We'll see. Once we get past June, I think June 1st is a big landing spot because a lot of these veterans that would have gotten draft pick compensation will now be over with. Teams will be able to sign these guys, and they will no longer cost the draft, or they will no longer get a draft pick in return, or another team will not anymore. So I think for a lot of these veteran guys, we'll get like a second, third wave of free agency here with some of these guys. So maybe they can add somebody else. Maybe they trade for somebody. We'll see. But as of right now, I kind of agree with where you're coming from. But did you have anybody else?
I do not, man. Like I think as far as looking at for redraft purposes for 2021, there weren't a lot outside of like the obvious guys, that we already mentioned at the top. So that's all I got.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. We have a couple 2 or 3 months here to really go through this and really dissect this and really start doing a deep dive. You can expect we'll start doing some of our player versus player videos what we did last year, where one of us, each of us will come on. We'll have a player. What we're going to argue the side of them. If there's a player versus player you guys want to hear about, let us know in the comment section. We'll definitely let you guys. We will definitely do that. But we're going to have a ton of those. We're going to up that tenfold. So you can expect those coming out every single week, multiple times a week, probably starting in June, where we're going to have a ton of those. We're really going to start battling these guys out. I think it's very helpful because we talk about guys that are close in ADP, the guys you're going to be making decisions about when you get to draft day come August. So with that being said, I appreciate everybody checking us out. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for future content. We're going to start going live. We'll start doing mock drafts. We got a lot of content coming out. I really appreciate it. I think that's all we got. So good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Perfect.